Hello and welcome to chapter 17 of the course. This chapter is about customer obsession. So what does it mean? For practical purposes, he says to be conscious and to have empathy for your customers. Remember that you are not making a product. You are solving a customer problem. So I think that this distinction is important. I'm learning product management as we speak. I already a project management professional. I have a certification from Google that is so um, learning product management now. And I think that this distinction is important for the very reason that sometimes product managers, as I've learned, get caught up in the fact that the product is the goal, but the goal isn't the product. The goal is to solve the customer's problem. And I think that's one of the fundamental ways in which product management differs from project management, because project management closes when the project is complete. And then you do a retrospective or stakeholders retrospective, and then the project is closed. But in product management, you might have the product launch and have retrospectives after that. But the product management or product development is a live process until, say, the product is shut down and development stops. But it's a lifelong process in the sense that the product continues to iterate. And the reason the product continues to iterate is because the company is solving the customer's problems using the product. So the product is the tool, it is not the goal. Take WhatsApp, for example. When WhatsApp started, it started just as a chat, a messenger sort of app. But today you can make calls on it. Today you can schedule team calls, you can do videos, you can post this and all that. But it wasn't like that when it started in the beginning. So the reason they're making those improvements and are consistent in doing so, take Apple products for example, is because each iteration, each new launch of features is targeted at solving a problem. So that is the goal of customer obsession. It is to be conscious, to be empathetic of the customers, and to ultimately solve the customer's problems. It says that it is critical that I and you continually live that customer problem. Only then can you solve it well. So if we do not have a thorough understanding of the customer and the pain points the customer have, we cannot create processes, products, or services that will truly meet the customer's needs. So we should be obsessed with the customer, is the recommendation. This focus should permeate every part of the company, from sales to engineering. It is particularly important to instill this mindset in your engineering department, because the engineering department tends to sit the farthest away from the customer and only hears about the customer in abstract terms. I think this is increasingly not the case anymore, because we now have like software developers who are engineers reading a lot of customer feedback and doing customer pain point research, looking at product reviews and so on and so forth. So I think engineering departments, software engineering departments are now more closer to the team. But the point is making here is that if you look at the organizational chart, the the engineering department is usually further back in the chain between the customer and the company than, say, the customer service team, because customer service team is constantly interfacing and interacting with customers. So it's important get the engineering team to a position where they can be truly obsessed with the customer's needs. The solution is to have customer support and sales leaders distill feedback and meet with the product team once a month to ensure feedback gets in the next cycle. Your sales department will already have a customer-centric mindset, but it is important for them to not prioritize every customer request. Customers know exactly what pain they are feeling, and they know that they want relief, but they don't know how feasible each solution is. The engineering team or you do. So the sales department will have already a customer-centric mindset. Okay, customers exactly know what they are feeling, but they may not know how feasible the solution is. And so, if you actively listen to your customer's pain, they will trust you to decide which solution will best erase that pain. If you do not listen to your customer's pain, then they will do the thinking and make demands about what the solution should be, no matter how impractical. Once those solutions are voiced, it's hard to walk them back. Build trust with your customers quickly by actively listening to their pain. Really imagine what it's like to have their needs and frustrations. Voice what you perceive back to the customer. It seems that you feel anger when your customer says that's right. Trust will be established. Teach this methodology to everyone in your company and have them practice it regularly using role play. So that's important. It is really important to have that. That's the point he's making here. And bottom line, customer obsession. You have to think. We have to, and as virtual assistants and chief of staffs, we're not in the so-called administration and operations team, and we forget what the goal of the company is to solve customer problems. And our product is one of those tools that we have in our arsenal to solve the problem. So the virtual assistant, much like the CEO, has a vested interest in the team's success, in the company's success, in the product team's success. So that's fundamentally what it is. And one of the things that can help you drive home that message, whether it's the engineering team, the administrative team, the the customer service sales team, the HR team, that can help everybody understand what the goal of the company is the culture in the company. And culture is the unspoken set of rules that people in a group follow when interacting with each other. You act differently when you're in a bar than when you're at a family dinner. That's because the rules that run the interactions between the different nodes in the networks have changed. Culture is the name of those rules. So the rules that govern relationships between or within a group is what we call culture. And company culture is different from family culture. So how do we know that? Because family values are sometimes different from company values. A CEO, for example, might have had great family values and wants his company, his team to have the same values, and then will coach the team around those values. But fundamentally, the company values are different and helps the company to function, the team at work to function in a way that helps the company to meet the customer's needs. So, what are values? Values are critical elements in your company's culture, and your culture will function at its most efficient if your employees understand and share them. Once your team has a referenceable, shared set of values, they can make decisions without you. And more importantly, evaluate candidates for culture fit. As the team grows, it says interactions between new clients and the core team will who defined the company rules, the company values rather, diminishes. Having a set of established and referenceable values helps disseminate those values to new team members without daily interactions. One misnomer, one misnomer CEOs sometimes, one misnomer CEOs sometimes have is thinking they get to choose the values. Okay, by the time you're 30 or so employees, your company has a set of values, whether you like it or not. It's now your job to codify what's already there. While it is possible to change a value, it will take a lot of work. So remember that example I made that a CEO might have great values in a family and then um, coach his team around those values if they are very positive and can help the team function cohesively. So it says here, however, that by the time you reach 30, especially if the values have not been established from get-go, you already have culture, and it's a way of relationship, a way of interactions. How does your small team interact or your big team? How do they interact? And when you're coming in as a virtual assistant, you have to imbibe that culture. Unless it gets to a point where you want to recommend to the CEO that we have to change something about the way we work, the way we relate with one another in the company. But usually, the culture is organic, and sometimes, as it says here, it is very possible to change it. So sometimes some unwanted elements within culture might be apparent, and when you find that, you want to change it to make sure the team knows what the values in that company are and are absolutely committed to those values. So agreeing on what your values are is the kind of statement that needs maximum buy-in. So it should involve your whole company. Send out a survey and gather contributions from everyone. Ask your team to suggest both a value and the name of an employee who exemplifies it. Then arrange all the suggestions into common teams and have your leadership team vote on the final cut. So the point here is made here as we've started is that companies should be created with the team, not from top to bottom, because you want to have buy-in with the entire team. As the CEO, the goal is to drive the company forward alongside the team, is to drive the company forward, which is the team, right? But you want to do so with buy-in. You don't want to impose it on them, is what he's saying. Once you have agreed upon your values, use them to guide your hiring and firing. Bring in people who want to live by these principles and let go of people who don't. Otherwise, your values will have no meaning. Distribute your values, bring them out, and repeat them then until your team knows them back to front. Every week at the all ends, highlight a value and a person whose actions best exemplifies the value that week. So distribute values, print them, and then identify every week the person who is exemplifying those values. It's interesting that in this point, remember this point, when he said here that we should develop company values by, especially in the beginning, you want to develop it by everyone voting on it, like that is writing and then citing an example in a person who shows it. I think that's a very great way to have buy-in, organic way to have it done, because it shows that you're building the culture alongside the people. You're not building it out of thin air and asking everybody to go by it. Of course, there are some inextricable, unnegotiable values that, like integrity, honesty, within the company that you want to have. It says the following are an example of Klebit's values. They combine a short pithy statement, easily rememberable, with a longer description for clarity. Care. Okay, you want to care, you want to craft, own your craft. Care, you want to empathize with customers. Team, that is working together. Teamwork makes the dream work. Fill the gaps. Truth, you have to be candid up front. Initiative, you have to be resourceful. Don't wait for permission. Figure it out or figure out who can. This is one of the biggest things I've learned from working with a global team or with an international team, people from the US or Europe. The thing they are very high on ownership. It's not like the culture that I'm from here in Nigeria. We have to build relationships, acceptable relationships with the senior team, um, the elders, and by doing so, we invariably wait their permissions before we move things. Because if you don't wait their permissions and you do not apologize for the mistakes that you make, they would say things like, "Oh, you act like you know it all. You are overconfident. You are proud, and so on and so forth." But the ownership mentality that I have seen demonstrated time in, day out, is that the ideal one, especially working with an international team, is that you want to own things. You see a problem or you think that a problem is likely going to occur. You want to prepare for it. You want to build a system. You want to address it before it even happens. And that's how it's very high on ownership. And that culture, if you're not open to that culture, as I've learned to do, I don't wait for things. In fact, I've had one Nigerian CEO tell me that, and he said one problem that he had with me at the point was that I I was thinking. She said I was thinking for her and that I wasn't waiting for our opinion. But what I was doing essentially was making moves, creating drafts. I wasn't even reaching out to customers or clients. I was just creating drafts and preparing things down, figuring things out before it gets to the point where we have to say it. And then I'll tell her, oh, I noticed this, and this is where I think we should make a move. So we did at the start it was okay with her, but later she felt like I should slow it down, and eventually I had to slow it down. But for the international teams, and which is one of the things I've enjoyed, that's how you want to grow. Own things, and then if you make a mistake, they'll happily give you feedback and say, "Oh, this isn't how I would have wanted it done. So next time, just do this instead." And it's just good because you get to grow that way. You have a mind of your own. You're testing things. You're getting feedback, and you're improving on what works. Fun. So when creating company culture, do not underestimate the value of fun. If people are having fun, they spend more time, energy, and awareness at the company. This leads to better problem solving and collaboration, which leads to a stronger company that creates more value. Most events that you enjoy and then invite but don't require your teammates to enjoy you. Host events, sorry, I said most events. I said it said rather host events that you enjoy and then ask the team to join you. Your litmus test is whether your teammates are hanging out with you and each other outside of work. There is something. I've seen like variations of it, but essentially it is that a member of the team will stand or maybe climb onto something and then he will close his eyes and fall backwards. And the team standing behind the test to make sure that people get to trust one another. But there's one funny one that I've seen where this man was told in a company meeting, climbed onto that thing. He was told to close his eyes and to fall. So the teammates were behind him. So he closed his eyes and instead of falling backwards, he fell forward. But the point is that that communication wasn't clear. They just said close your eyes and fall. But it is say close your eyes and form accords. So sometimes communication has to be very clear. So even when we're talking about, culture, communication is part of culture. How clear is our communication? And this example of asking people to hang out with you is a very good one. So Alex McCall, CEO and founder of Clearbit, I think we know him by now because we mentioned his name several times. Anyway, let's just do a search of Alex McCall, CEO of Clearbit. So let's just see because his name keeps popping up in nearly every chapter. Okay, so let's look for his face. So this is Alex McCall. This is his face here. Okay, so he says shares his favorite fun company-wide activities, boozy Fridays, take the team out to lunch at the restaurant, suggested times for lunch, and so on and so forth. So the other thing is celebration. Most companies are so focused on improving that they forget to celebrate. But celebration, like fun, is a key to building positive morale. Celebration doesn't mean lavish drunken parties. Quite the opposite. Celebration means taking a moment to appreciate the good that the company has achieved, as well as the good that departments, teams, and individuals have achieved. So, HR, there should be something in HR budget that tells whether it's HR budget or HR programming that gets the team around to celebrate things every now and then. So to celebrate, publicly acknowledge these achievements at all ends and team meetings. Remember to celebrate the very successful but often overlooked teams on the core product. You don't need to celebrate every team at every meeting. Create a rotation and then create a standing demo meeting where teams can show off their most recent creations. This should not be a required meeting, but rather should occur over a meal, lunch, or drinks. So, drinks, say, on Friday afternoon. So, you have hours. How should we spend our time? The question of working hours is inevitable in every company. Should you enforce specific starting and ending times, total number of hours? Remember, the key metric is output, not hours. If you impose hours, people often will simply put in the required hours, but without effort or enthusiasm, and you make little progress. The key is to inspire and motivate your team so that long, hardworking hours are not an imposition but a choice. If you are creating and tracking goals, habits, agreements, and key performance indicators, KPIs, openly receiving and providing feedback, chapters 19 to 23, and creating fun, then people will be naturally motivated to work hard. Okay, they'll be naturally motivated to spend more hours working. Maybe not necessarily for the fact of spending more hours, but say for the working hours, they'll be very glad to spend those working hours working actually and making progress instead of quiet quitting. So there's something called quiet quitting. Let's just Google it so that if you haven't yet heard of it. So it's a culture where people stay on the job, but then they aren't making progress. They are just staying on the job because they want to stay for salary, but not. But deep down in their hearts, they've already quitted on that job, so they are just staying on it. Okay, so people can use your hours in that sense, quiet quitting. If the work environment, the company culture does not enable them to enjoy the work or to be productive at work. So it says they'll know that you are heard and they'll they'll be having fun. So furthermore, if your team are hitting their individual goals and OKRs, ask yourself, does enforcing set times in the office really matter? Or are you just enforcing them for appearance sake? Okay. The same goes for working at home. It's really all about the output rather than the location or time spent working. So remember to always lead by example. Be the first one to show up each day, be the last person to leave. Once you have department heads, they should also set this example for their departments. Do not hire department heads who are unwilling to set good examples. Great. Whatever your team's working hours end up being, make sure there is a core period of the day when everybody shows up in the office so that collaboration can occur. I've worked in a company previously in an organization where there were staggered hours because of the situation in that city at the time. We had core hours. Everyone was fundamentally, we had working hours of say 8 to 5, but essentially you could come to the office at say 9 to 6. And because the office was in a residential environment, you could even come to the office at 6 to I mean at 10 to 7. But then I used to have one senior colleague who would come to the office at 11 o'clock, sometimes 12 o'clock, and I would leave before him. And it wasn't a good feeling because I felt, why is he coming to the company late, even though I would hear sometimes that he also leaves late. But the point was, you're still at the company when others have left, and it's not like you spent several hours working with the team. Um, you were more on your side of the team, and it wasn't a very cohesive environment for both of us. So it created a problem. So you don't want to have team leads who are not sticking to these hours, or team leads who prefer to use their flexibility um, for much of their convenience than prioritizing team cohesion. So meals. What's the culture of meals? Offering meals is a particular positive benefit. It allows team members to bond organically and with a wide range of people. Having people go out to get their own food usually causes them to stick with the same small subgroup each day. Offering lunch thus creates a more bonded overall team. Offering breakfast and dinner allows people to easily extend their work hours. Thus, there are benefits to offering meals beyond simply the pre-tax calculus. So there's a pre-tax calculus here, but it just says here fundamentally, if you give people food in the evening, for example, they might be encouraged to stay and work longer hours. Or if you give them breakfast, they might be encouraged to come to the office early and to put their energy into the work because they're getting fed for it and they still get paid at the end of the day. So some people would rather just pay salaries and say, "Oh, I'm paying you salary. You should be grateful," and all that. Yeah, and people are usually grateful. It's not the people are grateful for the work that they have. I have been grateful. I've always been grateful about my job, but I've always understood that there is something that the company holds the same way you owe the company your morality, that is being honest, having integrity, working hard, and so on. The company also owes you some benefits, some added benefits that the company could invest in to just make the team united, to put everybody to help encourage people to be energetic towards the job. So it promotes a healthy work environment. It says encourage team members to be present at meals so that they interact with one another. So it's not just giving people food to eat, but you also ask them to be around the table, like a campfire spirit. So I think this is one of the ideas in this book that sort of play with or develop the campfire mindset. So you want to have a, a campfire method. The campfire method is simply, or a campfire culture is simply one where the team always gathers together, especially around moments of fun, uh, talking, chatting, celebration. eating, and so on and so forth. The spirit should just be ill. Everyone should gather around together, maybe at least for 10 minutes in a day. So it's just a fun thing. And that's what he's saying in the book. Cross-team communication. As your company grows, you'll find that communication between members of disparate teams slows to a halt. This is especially prevalent between engineers and the rest of the company. This is only amplified if a good portion of your team is remote. One solution that I've seen work is to randomly assign team players every week to meet, get a coffee, or hang out virtually. There are tools like Donut to facilitate this. So cross-team communication is also important. And then we have politics. In this context, politics means lobbying to gain personal benefit. Okay, lobbying to gain personal benefits. It's not like geopolitics or national politics, just lobbying within the company for personal benefits. Politics are poison for a company. I've been in organizations where I've sensed, politicking within the company, and it's not usually a good thing at all because you'll always have diverse interests gunning for different things. It says here they direct energy away from customer problem solving, and once they take hold, the result is a quick race to the bottom. Politics are created when someone successfully lobbies the CEO or their manager for some kind of benefit. Others see this, so they in turn lobby. They then gain benefits, and the virus spreads quickly throughout the organization. So it's just about personal gains, and you do not want a situation where people will be lobbying each other or one another for personal gains. It often begins very innocently, like, "Excuse me, can I please talk to you about a raise? I have been at this company for a year now, and I've shown utter dedication by doing such and such, and I believe that I now deserve a raise." So it sounds good. He says it sounds good. It sounds compelling, and of course, um, you want to reward dedication. But if you give a raise based on this conversation, then the whole company will learn that the way to get a raise is to simply ask for it. So instead, why not just have a time when people can always come together in their contracts and have a conversation with the HR or the CEO about whether they should get a raise or not. There should be like a timeline, a a set timeline for it. So it shouldn't be based on just ask, because people will ask, and when they don't get things, that creates a problem internally and in interrelationships as well. So, or in relationships too within the company. So suddenly everyone will be trying to curry your favor. Be very careful about it. And so, as a virtual assistant, you also want to watch. I also want to watch to make sure that people are not unduly trying to use the office of the assistant to the CEO to curry favors from the CEO or to curry favors from you, because sometimes the CEO will trust you with certain of points of authority, and then some people would want you to call the shots in their favor. So it is difficult to create objective criteria for compensation raises and promotions, but there are models. The most successful method he knows of at the time of this writing, he said, I know of at the time of this writing, is called grade level planning. So grade level planning, there is a document here for that. So it says what it means is, at least that's what Tesla calls it. It calls for a very detailed definition of every position in the company and every seniority level, along with specific compensation metrics for each position and level. This is then shared throughout the company. Team members can then clearly see what they need to do to receive the next compensation and little level and title level. So managers must not deviate from this written schema. So again, it says it calls for a very detailed definition of every position in the company so that everybody can see what the compensation metrics are. When a company is smaller, fewer than 50 employees or so, and growing fast, there is often so much fluidity that it can be difficult to implement grade level planning. Most companies end up doing GLP at 150 plus companies, but that is often too late. The compromise is somewhere in the middle. So you want to do like 70 or 75, that is somewhere in the middle. But generally, if a team gets to 50, you should start looking at grade level planning so that conversations around compensation become um, very objective. So it says, I recommend starting to think about GLP at 25 to 50 employees. Yeah. And then implementing as soon as is practical after that. So as soon as you get to 25 or 50, um, you should, between 25 and 50, you should start thinking of grade level planning. So a lot of the files, I read this book. It was an interesting book, actually. So I read it when I was in secondary school. Inevitably, let's Google it so you see in case you haven't heard of this book before. So Lord of the Flies. So yeah, this is the book Lord of the Flies. It's just children being abandoned and doing their thing. So you could read the book, or you could find one of these um, movies about it and watch. But the book was interesting because it taught lessons about politics and what people do when they get into survival mode, even as little as children. Inevitably, conflict arises in any organization. Yeah. When it does, it is up to you to teach your team members how to give and receive nonviolent feedback. Again, this notion is up. Yeah, remember we did conflict resolution not so long ago. Okay, so I bolded that so you can take non-violent feedback and ensure that they do. Many managers do not enjoy dealing with people in conflicts and therefore instead say you two work it out amongst yourself. So I've heard this previously, you know, just there's both of you go and work it around yourself, and yeah, we just go off and work it around ourselves, and it doesn't work, and then we'll come back and say, we need a third party to objectively share feedback on what we aren't doing right. So, but unless your team is already proficient at nonviolent communication and radical candor, then the two people that you say go and work it amongst yourself will likely not be able to work it out on their own. If you continue to stay at arm's length, the result will be Lord of the Flies. People will go for each other. The absence of governance leads to civil war. This is not healthy. Remember that politicking thing. If you do not govern the environment, the company culture well, or the company well, you would have a civil war. You have very toxic politicking going on, and you wouldn't even know because usually company politicking is not so overt. When it is overt is when if people aren't doing it well, but when people are doing it well, and usually people can be very manipulative. They can know how to handle such things. It's just going on low key within the company, and no one will know except for when the underprivileged, so to speak, in the company who are benefiting from the politicking start murmuring or complaining or just getting fired or resigning. Being at companies, even so-called big companies in this country, and it usually baffles me when an HR isn't concerned about the churn rate within the company. They're just content with hiring people, and they don't think that it's a problem when people are very easily willing to go to leave the company even when they were enthusiastic about coming, and they're still committed to the mission. Because if you work for, say, a non-profit and then you resign from non-profit um, because of some element of the culture, you're moving to another non-profit, and maybe it could be another non-profit within the same category, within the same subsector, but it still shows that you're committed to the cause. But if you just walk away, the HR should know that there's a churn rate problem, and they should be conscious of managing that churn rate within the company. To stop this behavior, you must step in to adjudicate when your team members are unable to work it out on their own. Give them one chance to do so. If they are not able to step in to decide the issue or mediate the conflict. Remember when we did that conflict resolution thing, and then he talked about how the conflict resolution process should be documented. The point is to help ensure that everyone is objective about it, or you can have a greater level of objectivity than if you were doing it in using an undocumented methodology. If you don't want to do it yourself, hire a coach to teach and facilitate feedback sessions. Whatever you do, do not simply leave the participants on their own to work it out. If you do, you will be responsible for the emotional bloodshed that ensues. So I think that this metaphor is apt. The metaphor here is using Lord of the Flies. It's not like the company will generate into what happened in the original Lord of the Flies, but the 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 situation will resemble it in the sense that people will seek each other's maybe not exit, but as much as prevent somebody's unhappiness within the company, then you have affected the entire thing in the company. So part four, infrastructure. So that's what we're going to start with in the next video.